Okay, hey guys, Anime with Reviews here. It's going to be my review for Sachi-iro no One Room, chapter 36. And yeah, it was a pretty good chapter. So, started off with Matsubase and Oni-san. It like changes between Mr. and Oni-san sometimes. So, we see them somewhere, and Oni-san or Mr. is just like, this is the worst. Base, what is pretty much is. So, then it goes into to explain how it got started. They're working somewhere, it looks like. And so go back a bit, explaining how they got here pretty much. And essentially, they need money, to live off. They need to work for. Oni-san needs to work. I'm gonna call him Mister, I guess. Feel more natural. The Mister needs to work so they can stay alive, essentially, but don't want to leave Matsubase and his partner like together with Sachi. Or Mister don't want to leave Sachi alone with the both of them because there's no real telling what they would do. Basically, they could just grab her and run if they left her. Because who's to say they wouldn't do that? They don't trust them, obviously. So just leaving her with the both of them seemed like a bad idea. So the chapter cover page thing is like some vegetable or cut of pepper or something. No, it's kitchen. Because will an unexpected friendship blossom between them? So we go back a few days ago. Someone saying, I see you can't go to work because of us, and then Matsubase is like, then how about I work at the same place? And then Sachi and Mr.'s faces. And so Matsubase is saying, you're worried about leaving XXX, Sachi, to watch over us by herself, right? If it's only airhead Yashiro left behind, I'm sure Sachi will have no trouble at all handling him. And so yeah, Mister's like, no, that's why we're looking for a solution where I don't have to work. So yeah. Now, Sachi says, well, now you have no more need to worry. And Yashiro's like, eh. Sachi says, if push comes to shove, I'll kill him. It's easy to go work on Oni-san. Worst case scenario, I can even frame him for the kidnapping. So yeah, she's like, you better obey me if you don't want to end up a criminal, Yashiro. Matsubase is like, I don't want anyone to know I hired a criminal, so stay sharp and make an excuse for me if anything. You're fired if you fuck up. So he's like, Yashiro's like, wait, not you too, Matsubase. I don't know if I was saying it wrong. Yeah, Matsubase. He says, you sell out. And Sachi says, Onisan was worried I couldn't handle both of you while he was at work, but now you'll be fine, right? So, pretty much split them between them. So, Sachi stays with Yashiro, Matsubase goes with Onisan. And so, yeah, she tells him to have fun at work. And so, back to the present, I guess. He is like, ha. And so, Matsubase is like, why are you such a downer? Sachi said she was fine with this setup too, didn't she? And you agreed to it. So he's like, I won't play detective while we're at work. Sachi is fine, you know what an airhead Yashiro is. And he says, no. Just thinking about how impossibly annoying you two are, that's all. And he's just like, can't you just leave us alone? So Matsubase says, you sure don't beat around the bush, huh? And he says, you know, this is my first part-time gig at a vacation motel. We're almost like students. Not that I would know what it feels. Yeah, not that I would know what it feels to be what I think it feels like. Then Matsubasa says, "Say, can you really live on only part-time gigs? You paid for that car up front after all. It feels like you've got a lot of money lying around. You've got good savings or something." It does kind of raise questions of the fact that they would just pay for a car like that. Cars cost a lot of money. And so obviously Mr. says, "I'm not obliged to tell you." And Matsubasa is like, "You were just lovely, aren't you? You're so good at small talk." And then he says, "Thanks." Mr. says, "Thanks." And then he says, "I was in your care when I had the flu, but by no means have you earned my trust. Don't do any more meaningless prying." And he's like, "I'll kill you." And Matsubasa is just like, "Sure, go ahead." So obviously he's not going to. He's already had the chance to do that and prove he wouldn't. And so yeah, then one of the workers, or the lady who I guess owns the place, maybe comes in saying, "Newcomers, your shift began at 10. Get your asses moving." Yeah, they're late. Then she says, "There are many things for newcomers to learn. Hurry." Leaving Leaving Handsome here aside, I made a special exception to let you work here, middle schooler. And he's not supposed to say, "Huh? I am not in middle school. Gone over this with you so many times." And then the lady's like, "Your silly lie isn't going to fool anyone." She's like, "Come on, chop chop. There's going to be a tour group here soon." And Maswell's like, "Hey, no need to push." She's like, push them through the door, like saying, "Come on, we need to get moving." And someone says, "I know it's only your," the lady says, "I know it's only your first shift, but I need you to work overtime today." Yeah. So yeah, Maswell's like, "What?" And she's like, "Sorry, but we're short on hands." And Mister says, "I'm surrounded by noisy folks." But yeah, that'd probably be a pretty sad slash annoying first day of work. Goes in there first day and already has to work overtime. So back to Sachi and Yashiro. He's just like, XXX-san, how much longer are you going to point that at me?" Because she's kind of just sitting on the floor with the knife pointed at him, and says, "Gonna do this until Nissan gets back." So Yashiro's like, "That's going to be 6 hours from now." And then she says, "Don't think you can get friendly with me just or because I'm only a child. I don't trust you one bit." Yashiro's like, "Right, of course you don't." And he thinks, I have to sit like this for 6 hours, or for the next 6 hours. They're like sitting on their knees pretty much. And he remembers, like, yeah, what Matsubase told him about them not being normal. And then he's like, I finally think I understand what Matsubase meant. Sachi's stomach growls, and so he's like, "Must be hungry. It's lunchtime after all." And so she's just like, "Yeah, I'm not hungry at all." Like, "But your belly is growling. You're hearing things." And so he offers to make her something to eat. Says, "I have a few things in our room we could use," because he cooks a lot at the office. And so she's just like, "I won't eat anything you make. You're going to mix something in it, aren't you? Like poison." Yashiro just kind of a normal person, so he's like, "I don't have anything ominous like that." And goes into her abuse pretty much, being that, like, "You'll make me eat it off the floor, hit me with a hot frying pan, or swing the knife at me. Letting you cook would be like handing you a gun." So she's like, "I'd never allow it." And so yeah, then he thinks the abuse, and so yeah, he remembers Matsubase telling him that. So he tells her that he won't do that, or he says, "I won't do that to you. We're not like your parents. Though I suppose you won't believe me even if I say that. How about this? You can keep the knife pointed at me if you like. I can take the first bite too if you're worried about it being poisoned. In this place, I can probably cook with my back turned to you. Feel free to stab me if you think I'm up to something. If there's anything else you feel uneasy about, I'll listen to your every instruction. How does that sound? So, giving her all the power, basically. Like, you could watch me cook. I'll give you the knife, keep it pointed at me. Just think I do anything shady, you can stab me. So we go back to Matsubase, and they're like cleaning a bathroom or something. And so yeah, Matsubase's like, sheesh, I keep telling her I'm not in middle school. Pretty much transitioned from where they just were, getting pushed out of the door, I guess. And then he's saying, can't believe a tour group would visit this inn all the way out here. And he's like, there aren't even any places to see here. So Matsubase then asks, I've been curious, what's Sachi? So yeah, because they don't really refer to her that way. So it's like, that's what you call her, isn't it? And then Mr. ignores him and he's like, right. Is that like a nickname you guys came up with, Sachi? What does it mean? It's got nothing in common with XXX. And he's like, could it be borrowed from the kanji character of happiness? I suppose not. Given the situation you're in, is not really happy one, but yeah. He didn't say that, but that's pretty much what he's implying. And he says, you did ask me to leave the meaningless prying, just pretend I was thinking out loud, but perhaps to Sachi this really is happiness, compared to her old life at least. She doesn't have to worry about shelter, food, or a change of clothes, nor does she have to see her parents. She's living with an Onisan she really trusts. Of course she'd never want to go back. So then Mr. says, trust isn't something that was built between us. So Matsubase is like, really now, I'm not. And Mr. says, not continuing our life together out of goodwill or as a favor. We are both using one another in this relationship. Our intentions just happen to align, and we have, like, when she yelled for him to hurry up. So he's like, that's all it means to me, like, kind of in his head. Matsubase doesn't really respond and says it's strange. And says it doesn't seem that way to me, basically. And yeah, it's like, pretty much brings up Sachi is like, was really desperate whenever he got sick. Like, would she truly be so desperate to save someone she doesn't trust? Because, yeah, he's like, don't touch him, basically, whenever he got sick before. And so, yeah, he's like, Matsubase is like, Sachi was distraught when you collapsed, you know. I know it can't be out of goodwill the moment you kidnapped her. However, it didn't come off to me as something cold like a aligned interest. So then we go back to Sachi and Yashiro. She's asking if he always has this stuff with him. Cooking stuff, basically. Like, asking if he always has it on him. And he's like, I mean this. So we get more development, I guess, into Yashiro's character. Him saying that we've only been eating cup ramen and stuff since we moved here, so I bought this off the net the other day. You didn't let us leave the apartment after all. He's like, I don't carry this around, so yeah, they were pretty much getting watched 24/7, so you had to order food over the internet. Or, like, ingredients, basically. Because he says that Matsubase has pretty bad eating habits, so he says, you see, I used to look after people as if it were the normal thing to do, so I really hated seeing that. So yeah, we get more into Yashiro's character, like I was saying, being that he's an older brother and stuff, saying that ever since I was a child, I've made to look after every one of my younger siblings. He says perhaps it was the sense of duty that came with being a firstborn, or rather, it seemed like my own desires didn't matter since I was the older brother. That used to make me think how unfair the world was. Truth is, I had many things I wanted for myself. There were many things I wanted to do, but my siblings depended on me, and I couldn't bring myself to disappoint my parents' expectations either. So because I led a life like that, I ended up being a worrywart. I just can't seem to settle down unless I know everyone is doing okay, you know? Sachi like stands up and says, you're probably not interested in this. Or I guess she like it was just showing her. It looked like she had stood up and sitting. And then Sachi asks him, have you ever thought about running away from being the older brother? And like, she's like, you don't like it, right? He says, I have. My mother passed away 2 years ago. She knew she was sick. Still, my father became very depressed since her passing. He says, Matsubase is a nice person, but the paycheck is a lot smaller than what I'd like in order to look after my siblings who are still in school. He says his father is working hard too, so he tries not to complain. I have to keep myself together, yet there have been many times where I grew tired of this. But I don't dislike my family. I'm sure that's where we differ. So he's like, you don't need to try to empathize with me. I love my family. That's why I can't abandon them. Maybe I'm a bit envious of you since you were able to abandon everything. So yeah, it's mainly where they differentiate is Sachi hates her family, but he loves his family. Her hating her family is kind of justified. But yeah, so sorry. Pause. And he's like, just kidding. You can forget what I've said. It's a bad habit of mine to just, I guess, start talking. And the food gets done, so he's like, there we go. And serves it to her. I think, yeah. So yeah, he says, there we go, because food got done or something. So he says, we don't have any, or yes, Sachi says, we don't have any plates. One of them says, we don't have any plates, so we'll have to eat straight from the pan. I guess we can use a box as a table. So yeah, it's Yashiro saying that. I warmed up the packet of rice in the water. A microwave would have been great. So yeah, they have like no real way to eat stuff other than just eat it after it's cooked off the pan. So yeah, and then he says, seriously, Matsubase says, he's like, seriously, thanks to Matsubase, son, my skills have leveled up because it was cooking. And then you got Matsubase like thoughts being like, I'm hungry, and you're more mature compared to him. On. And then Yashiro picks up the knife and says, I was a bit worried about the pan, not the knife. It's like the angle is kind of turned. I was worried about the heat since it's not a gas stove. And he's like, right. I'm supposed to eat it first for poison, and he's like, pretty tasty. And Sachi just like asks him, why would you cook for me? Thought you didn't like to look after others, so more the reason not to. And she's like, you don't like me, nor am I your family. I'm just a stranger, aren't I? And Yoshiro's like, that's true, but I can't leave those in need. Plus, I was also hungry. So I just made a bit for you as while I was at it. And Sachi's like, that's what I mean. What do you gain by doing that? And he's like, that's a tough question. Like, not about very much learning, I guess. Like, it's true that I don't like to be relied upon too much, but when it comes to helping someone, I don't think about what I might gain from it. And Sachi remembers the teacher being like, that's called love. And so Sachi is like, don't tell me that's the love. And Yashiro says love. And then he's just like, how did that go from 0 to 100 so quick? I think you're comparing this too much to two extremes. Or extremities, that's what he says. And she says, but if I think of it your way, I suppose both our filled bellies count as merit, don't you think? Neither of us would want to stay hungry, right? And I guess a little bit of time passes, and Yashiro says, it's getting cold, let's eat. But she tries it and she's like, it's tasty, almost as good as what Onisan makes. And then Yashiro says, it seems you've developed a habit of overthinking. Think you shouldn't decide on whether or not to interact with someone based on merits and benefits alone. Think most people would just like to be on good terms. Yeah, it's like that's what you think, but there are people out there who just want to use you, right? Or Sachi says that, I guess, and then Yashiro says there's lots of people that don't too. And Sachi says that's just what you believe. Don't think your morals are always the norm. And then Yashiro says, then let me ask you. And he brings up a very valid question, being like, did you look after Onisan when he was ill because you'd gain from it? Or because you'd get a direct benefit, basically? Was he worth the desperation you showed him? So pretty much, why were you so asking a question of like, would you gain anything by showing him that level of desperation? And like, was he worth it? Pretty much, kind of thing. So Sachi says, I only did that so I could continue my life with Nissan. Don't want to return to my old lifestyle, but if he died, then it wouldn't be possible to live this way. That's why there was a benefit to looking after him. Taking action without thinking about benefits and losses is something stupid I would never do. Yashiro says, in that case, it doesn't have to be him, right? Pretty much the big point here is, like, I guess, the fact that she wants to be here, basically. Or wants it to be him, I guess. Because Yashiro says that pretty much, like, then it doesn't have to be him, right? And he says, I don't know how you met Onisan, but if you don't want to return to your old life, there's many other ways to go about it, basically. So he's like, getting kidnapped is such an extreme method there are many more reasonable paths you could take. But, and he says, but you, and then she looks up, and then Yashiro remembers what Matsubase told him, that they most likely don't want someone to understand them, or don't need someone to understand them. So he's like, oh, never mind. I'm full, you can have the rest, pretty much. So he like cuts off the conversation because it was getting attached, I guess, or something like that. He was starting to try to understand her. So we're back to Mr. and the name he gave being Mikimoto. Like, can you give me a hand? And he says, sure. So then he's thinking, it didn't come off as something as cool as the line interest, then what else are you implying there could be? Like, what else other than a line interest could be there? But yeah, pretty good chapter. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, share the video. Links down below to stuff like Patreon, Twitter, Discord, all that down below. Definitely seeming like there's some kind of interest between them, I guess, or like a romance-ish type thing. But yeah, that's all I got, so we'll see you all later. So yeah, bye.